guys. Hey, folks. Hey, y'all. Afternoon session of ABV. Thank you for being here. For those of you who've been here since the AM, thanks for hanging out. We're going to kick off with a really special panel featuring James Tsai, Yurka Jure, Roxy Eve, and Bianca Senin of Industry Sessions. Before we get it going, I just want to acknowledge the role that Industry Sessions has played in the formation of this community, and also just planting the seeds over the last several years of what would become ABV, what has become a really tight circle of friends, collaborators, disruptors, and just really pushing each other and informing each other and inspiring each other to constantly kind of question what goes on in this industry. We all come from natural wine backgrounds, and I think really push each other to kind of redefine what that means to us, what it means for our people, our ancestors, our elders, and our community. So big shout out to this woman right here, Yurka Jure. The heart and soul of much of what we do. So just want to shout that out and acknowledge it before the day gets any further. And I'm going to turn this over to her, and we're going to run this Industry Sessions panel about rooting natural wine. Yeah.
It is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Asada Shakur. That was a driving statement for me to have intentionality with every person that could be other in the wine space, to see them, to know that I saw them, and to say, I want to have a relationship with you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to have a relationship with you. And let's build. An Industry Sessions was born in 2020 after the death of George Floyd. We put out the call, and it spread throughout 14 cities in the United States and one in Canada. It created this beautiful network of people who love each other and support each other. And now we have ABV. This is incredible. So I just want to say, Justine, Ja, Bianca, thank you for the space. Thank you to all of you for taking up space with us. Let's continue to build it. Christopher Renfro, I love you. I want to shout out Rita Manzano in the back, who's also part of 280 Project. I want to shout out Alberto from Chicago, who was pouring wine in his neighborhood during the pandemic in Pilsen. That's the work. That's the work. So we're going to dive deep into rooting into natural wine. And I know we're talking about agriculture and nature, but we are nature. So it's as much about humans as it is about the soil. So I want to lead in with that. But my first question is, why does natural wine even matter?
Hi, everyone. I feel like for myself, kind of getting into wine wasn't even necessarily like the goal. Like I started working in restaurants. To be honest, I wanted to work in wine because I was like, I should already be good at my job. Like, I'm working in restaurants, I should know about wine. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people can relate to that are wine now, where there's something really electric about it. There's something very enticing about something that's other, about something that's counterculture, about something that's different. And I feel like that's really what got me into natural wine, of like, oh, there's this other thing that exists in this kind of like bigger conversation. And that's what drew me to natural wine specifically. But in terms of why it matters, I think it's a really big question, because at the end of the day, we're all people selling someone else's product, and we choose to believe in this different thing. Like we choose to believe in the way in which this certain product is made, and it only matters as much as you care about it, right? Like if you're selling it just to sell it, that's not really the point, and it comes across. Like if you're selling it just because it's a commodity, because it's exciting, because it's a trend, you lose that connection a little bit. And I think that brings it back to like what we're doing here. Like this is why it matters. Because there's this many people who are invested, who are interested, who just want to talk about it. Not because it's cool, not because it's trendy, but because it's our driving passion, and we want to be able to share that passion with others. So that's my answer.
Hello, Roxy, she, her, my pronouns. I guess to continue, the line work that you're driving, natural wine became appealing to me or attractive to me when I started to realize that wine is just cultured bottle. And that's, as a person, I was for sociology, and I just wanted to study like culture and language and like the story of humanity as a people, as a society, sociology. So it was the relationship with the land, the relationship with the culture, the relationship with the food. But more importantly, like you mentioned, counterculture. And one of the things that since I found out I was going to be doing this, that I've been thinking is just like stuck in my head is that natural wine shouldn't be counterculture. In fact, what's considered conventional wine, which we should just be calling synthetic wine, because if they're going to talk shit about natural wine, then we should really call their bluff and say, well, you're not making, you're manipulating wine. Well, sorry, I was like, I would like to explore the relationship of these people to this land and to this product that ultimately becomes like the story of our friendships and our relationships. And that was what natural wine became to me when I became interested in it, and the community that it's allowed me to be part of it.
I think the thing that pulls most people into natural wine, I think there's maybe two things that I hear over and over again that I also relate to. Maybe one is the sensation of a spectrum being tasted, being felt, being perceived that is wider than you maybe previously thought possible. Just sort of feeling like having that pure, that sensation of flavor, possibility kind of exploded. And also I think there's a way that the people behind that thing that you're tasting also feel more immediate, more present. There's something, or there should be something human-sized about natural wine. And I also think, if you think about the history of wine, if you think about the deep history, the long history of wine, you take something like orange wine, which is something that people come into my wine bar every day. It's new, they're curious. It's a novelty, it's something they're unfamiliar with. But this is also rooted both for very practical reasons at the beginning of what people did when they were fermenting. It is easier for fermentation to go through without being stuck if you have skins with the juice. It's helpful. And that juice is then more stable. It's less likely to go off. I think when I think about the history of wine, I think that a lot of what's most exciting about natural wine today is rooted in deep practices, ancestral practices that actually don't really belong to Western Europe. It started in the Caucasus, that spread through the Mediterranean, practices that owe in something like Nitata in Chile, owe themselves to indigenous fruit fermentations. Practices that are also linked to, I think, the fact that for most of wine's history, if wine was a commodity, if wine was a luxury good, if you were selling it, you had to do something to it for it to survive the journey. If you put that shit on a boat, it had to be fortified. You were putting lead in it. You were cutting it with salt water. You were fortifying it. It had to be sweet. It had to be different. Up until the 1840s, Bordeaux, to survive the Channel crossing, had brandy, grape juice, red wine from Spain added to it, and then it was sealed up in barrel. And meanwhile, while that commodity wine was happening, people were making wine in their backyards, wine for their neighbors, wine for their communities. And when I say wine here, I'm saying people were fermenting. And I think what's unique about this moment now, if there's something unique about it, as we like say in like the ruins of late capitalism, there's, because of like refrigerated container ships and because of like air travel and because of all the things that are tying us together, we also have this weird opportunity to taste something that's fragile and handmade and shouldn't be able to survive crossing the ocean and access that feeling of standing in the backyard of the person who grew it. And I think that's kind of unparalleled that we can come together in that moment. And I think that spark, that feeling, I think that's addictive. I think that's, I don't know, that it's hard to walk back from that.
So much passion. But does that passion translate to consumers? Does it matter if it does?
I like the way that this is kind of like a conversation of what it means to care about something that, again, like going back to what I said before, that like we didn't make and I didn't make, but to care so much about it, to feel so connected to it, that like addictive feeling, is contagious in my opinion. I think that the reason why this matters and the reason why people are excited about it is because we spend our time educating ourselves and then wanting to kind of like spread the word. We always talk about kind of like this, you know, for the last couple of days, we're talking about preaching and pontificating and you know, speaking up and speaking our truth. And like, I feel like these are the things that people want. They want that kind of like connection to something, which makes it really easy to talk about it with somebody else. And so it doesn't even necessarily have to be the subject of natural wine. It's kind of anything. If you're talking to somebody who's clearly like really passionate about something and kind of like getting off on it a little bit when they're talking to you, you're going to want to keep talking to them about it. At some point, you're going to be like, well, I would like to feel what you're feeling. You seem very excited about this. And I think, at least for me, being able to talk to folks about this thing that I really care about, it doesn't feel like, and I'll even tell folks, I don't like selling people things. I don't like to upsell. I don't feel like I'm not going to convince you to get this bottle that costs $65, which is this bottle that costs $43. People will just ask me, what are you excited about? And the second I start talking about it, they're like, well, I don't really care how much this costs. And you seem very jazzed about this. So like, I want to know whatever it is you're feeling. I want to be involved in that. And I think that's like when it could be about film, it could be about gardening, it could be about farming, it could be about whatever it is. People want to have that like kind of contagious feeling. And that's what makes natural wine exciting to me. It's more about sharing a part of yourself. And so when people have these sort of like small, like mom and pop restaurants or these sorts of like small, locally independently owned spaces, at least for me, in my opinion, it's a reflection of yourself and what you're excited about. And that's what draws people in. You know, it's just a reflection of what it is you find passion in. And so, you know, when it comes to consumers, and whether or not it matters, I mean, it's just a matter of how you relate to the thing and how people receive that. If you want to share something with someone and you translate that energy of just like, I'm excited about this and this is why, whether it's about the people who farm it or whatever it is, I think people just want to attach themselves to that energy and it grows and it spreads.
One of the interesting things that I've seen, especially with the formation of industry sessions and the expansion of a network of beverage professionals, and by beverage, I want to make sure that we include coffee, that we include tea, that we include juice, that we include producers, and you know, of alcoholic beverages. And the reason why that expansion of that network in the frame industry sessions, but in general, is so important is that there is now a new generation of people who didn't have access to wine that was produced that was not like grocery store wine. And I'm by grocery store wine, you know, where they've got big brands and the things that like, you know, like you find at the corner liquor store in New York, you know, that has the bulletproof glass. And that's the thing. It's like when I used to go to the corner store with the bulletproof glass, and I would definitely have a fake ID, and I was buying me and Jay for a hoodie party. But in that moment, I remember like, okay, well, like there's these jug wines of Carlo Rossi, there's Barefoot, there's this. But then one day I said, wow, but there's like these other wines that like have a story attached to them. Like it's not just this like label that like is like, well, not the soulless. It's more so like that it's generic. And because I don't want to say soulless because at one point that label was probably small and they were making wine that served the people that it needed to serve, but then it became a commodity. But for when I felt when I felt, and now when I see people, for example, coming to the wine shop in New Orleans that I operate, and they ask me about natural wine, I think it's because they are curious about the people behind it. And I know for a fact that like they know the name Camus, but who makes Camus? Sorry, does anyone? I don't know. Who makes Camus? Is there a person? Versus, is there a person? Meanwhile, I have Where's Wine This, and I'm like, oh, Chris Christensen makes fucking wines, and this is his project to make, you know, natural wine that's accessible and affordable. And I can actually name a human that a person can relate to. And sometimes the consumer's like, I just get the cheapest bottle of wine. I'm like, yeah, I got you, man. Sometimes. But there's also the day where they're like, oh, thank you for that affordable wine. But I've been seeing all these crazy labels that you have on the shelf, and maybe I want to know more. Or maybe I work in a restaurant and I'm like, I want to make more money. It seems like the person who like knows about the wine makes more money. But then there's a gateway. It's like walking into Narnia. There's a gateway that happens that then transcends into like, wow, there's so much, there's human and then more human, and then there's culture, and then there's life. Life, yeah. It's portal. It's like portal work. It's right.
I like the gateway. I like the open door. I think we get caught up. The thing that attracts people at first is the aesthetic, right? It's the label, it's the color of the juice in the glass, it's a feeling, it's a vibe. The problem is that, so this is sort of to the question, you know, how does natural wine matter? I think it matters to the extent that it opens that door to being able to connect with growing things, being able to connect to farming, being able to see a world that's being twisted into pretzels by climate change, being able to understand histories of colonialism and appropriation, being able to kind of use that, like use wine as a lens to kind of see the world a little bit more clearly and a little bit more deeply. Because something I think about a lot is that an aesthetic can be co-opted. You can, you know, we're gonna see fucking Carlo Rossi orange wine. You know, it like they'll be like, oh, you want a little haze? Yeah, you can have that. Yeah, I got a bag full of haze. You're gonna have this Audi in feature. And that, like, the look can be common. That it's but if we can, like, if it makes, if the fact that it can taste like all these different things, look like all these different things, redefine what wine, what kind of expectations around wine are, that's like jujitsu. We can use that to smuggle in a lot of shit along the way. I think that's why maybe it matters. Because it doesn't have to matter, I think, inherently. I think it should, but it matters if we make it matter.
Just gonna turn the tide a little bit, but not everyone in wine thinks like us. Surprise, truth bomb. So sorry to burst the bubble, but there's so much dogma that comes around natural wine, and most of the time I find it in people that don't actually understand fermentation and farming, and they just don't have the full picture of what wine is. So I just want to ask you guys, what are some ways that you combat the dogma in your markets? So we have Miami, New Orleans, New York here.
I've been having this conversation, I feel like, with folks more recently, and I think it's directly related to how do you choose the wines on your shelf? You know, how do you, like, you know, you have 100 different wines, producers, SKUs, whatever it is. How do you decide one versus the other? Conversations about why having German Riesling, or why having certain wines out of Sulfur. We had a trip a couple of years ago, a couple of folks here, we went to Virginia, and a really, really intentional trip where we visited several different wineries that all kind of had a different ethos. Some 0-0, some would sorry, oh yes, 100. No, some would not add any sulfur, some who would, you know, add yeast in order to start fermentation, some that would have a starter in the vineyard, just different ways in which they approach their winemaking styles. And we had very candid conversations of like, why do you do that? At the end of the day, we don't make the wine, and so I would like to know from the person who makes the wine, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And then that helps us understand, like, okay, that makes sense to me. This is still within the realm of farmer wine, farmer-made wine. So that's kind of A. But B is in the fact that we don't make the wine and we're connecting with these actual humans who are making it their life's work. I'm not going to tell somebody who's making it their life's work to have a specific goal on the spectrum of natural wine, how to do their job in order to sustain themselves. What I mean by that is I'm not saying, okay, because you add 40 parts per million of sulfur to your wines, I don't rock with that. I'm like, okay, talk to me about the vintage, talk to me about what happened, talk to me about what your process was like this year versus last year. And why did you make certain decisions? Do I like what it tastes like? There's this really kind of like more intensive conversation about decisions that are being made, as opposed to this dogmatic, like all or nothing. It's like you add sulfur, I'm not rocking with it. Like I can't tell you how you're going to sustain your livelihood when you're committed to this sort of like bigger project. Like there's this sort of like bigger conversation we're having of natural wine and what it looks like and what it could be like, and the experimentation that we're going to have in order to add medicine to the wine if the wine's like not really working with you this year. That maybe some people are like, well, that's not natural. And there's all these different ways in which folks are kind of getting a little bit more creative of sticking to these sort of like bigger, holistic, like natural wine methods in order to keep in line with what we believe in, while being like, I need to be able to work with this. We can get into a bigger conversation about climate change and how that has obviously affected certain people making natural wine. And I think, you know, combating it and talking it with customers, it's more kind of like, this is who this person is. This is what they do. This is how they do it. This is why I respect them. This is what happened with this specific wine that's different than last year. It's a conversation. And I think that those conversations get people to understand like, oh, natural wine is not this one thing. It's the spectrum like we're talking about.
That was beautiful. I find that, you know, more than ever, people are looking to connect through products, because, you know, we are starting to analyze our food differently. We're starting to hopefully analyze our relationship to the earth and, you know, how sustainable it is for us to live in it. And then the people that even give the chance to like venture into a wine that is made with methods that are good for the earth around it. For example, regenerative agriculture, or, you know, understanding like what not tilling means, understanding how to create a biosphere rather than a monoculture. Sorry, I find that when I have a conversation with a consumer and it's maybe their first or second time approaching these wines, it's because something is shifted in the mindset that I care about what I put in my body for food. Like, why haven't I thought about this for the rest of the stuff that I do? I buy like these really nice products that support for my face, and are probably nice. I buy organic hair care. I buy, organic food. I think about the restaurants that I eat at. So then, where does it translate into wine? Or on the other side of it is like, if I don't care, and I've been wine as a luxury agricultural product is mostly the branding of it, until we realize that they're the people that like are the most luxury are doing all of the practices that mostly that natural wine producers do. I love the champagne. I learned that Louis Roeder is the largest grower of biodynamic grapes in Champagne. And I was like, what? Like, is that what? Like, why are we not? So why is this conversation? Like, is it relevant to the consumer? They're still going to keep buying Cristal because they think it's the best product. Well, is it the best product because it has the best farming methods and it has the most intentional production, production quality? Or is it that, like, can we identify with the human behind it? And that is what makes luxury. Like, what is worth more, the brand or the human behind it? And so I think that there's now this level of like, okay, maybe the humanity of the person producing this and that the family that this serves and maintains a roof over and allows them to keep land is more important than like being like the person with the most expensive bottle in the room. So I think that that's part of like the dogma of like no longer approaching it like what is the best wine, but is like what's the best made wine.
I want to go back, I guess, to Bianca, what you were saying about like, why are these 100 wines on the shelf? Like from a buyer's perspective, why whose stories do we decide to tell? Who do we decide to champion? How do we put our money where our mouths are? And I think to relate that to dogma, if we care about agriculture getting better, regions moving in the right direction, people having the means to keep on doing the work that they're doing, we have to meet them where they're at. So if they're doing the work, if they're trying to get, so like if you're in a region where you don't have access to land and you're purchasing grapes and you're working with farmers who aren't necessarily working organically yet, but if you have producers that are showing them, hey, like I pay you a little more money if you stop spraying Roundup this year. Like I can, you might not have to gas up that tractor 14 times and like do the treatments that it says on the back of the Monsanto box, whatever it is. Like I think we as professionals, and then I think this ultimately trickles down to people who just drink for fun. But if you care about you care about hybrids because they present an opportunity to see plants that are better adapted to their landscape and enable certain types of farming, then you better show that you care by championing those producers in those regions. And if they're 90% or 85% of the way there and you want them to be 100, you have to start showing up when they're at 80. You can't be like, I'm not gonna fuck with this until you get to 100%. That's not. People need to be carried a little bit, and then so you got to choose. You got to choose where you want to fight those battles, where you want to push, and where you want to help other people who are pushing. I think we owe it to the people whose stories we're telling, every night on that table side or in that store.
Next question. When was the moment that you felt that wine was yours, and how do you make wine feel yours? I think I belong to wine. Wine doesn't belong to me.
Oh.
And the reason I say that, I think that I belong to wine and wine doesn't belong to me because, again, if we're talking about the championing of stories, being, what was the term that was the stewards of the narrative?
Yeah.
God, that literally gave me chills. I'm just saying, stewards of the narrative. I think that when I chose to become a hospitality professional and then kind of hone that part of myself to specializing in wine, to kind of quote Christy Norman, who I admire deeply, and she operates in an amazing realm that I don't operate in, but she just created this beautiful position for herself. Wine is a passport, and it was just like wine is the passport of being able to experience culture and language and food and geography and climate and the story and all of that is just like I just love the dynamism.
Yes.
Dynamism. Yes, dynamism. I love the dynamism of the opportunity of like it never being the same. Like I don't know, most of us are neurodivergent in this industry. Let's be freaking honest. And it's like we can't have that. We don't gravitate to like one day, and not every day can be the same because then we'll lose it. And so I think that is why I belong to wine, because not even the same bottle by the same producer of a different, maybe a different case is just gonna be a touch different. And I'm okay with that because I don't want wine to be monotony makes me really fucking sad. Monotony is like literally the death of my soul. And I think that when we consider wine and we consider the change in the vastness that wine has the capacity to be, is that the minute that we start thinking of consistency in wine, and by consistency, I'm not trying to say that flaws are okay, because I think that there is a way to make wine that is sound, but also, doing it in a way that is not manipulated. But for me, it's like a wine that like tastes the same all the fucking time is shitty. It's not a good shitty, bad shitty. Like it's like bad. Just bad. It's disrespectful to the land. It's disrespectful to our intelligence. It's disrespectful. Yeah, it's like every day you make rice and beans. It's not gonna taste the same every fucking day. You want it to probably like most of the time, but like mommy changes stuff a little bit every day. Like sometimes the tomato is just a little more ripe one day than the other day when you make a sofrito, and it just doesn't taste the same. So why the fuck would I want my wine to taste the same all the time?
Get your life, bro.
No. It's okay, I already knocked your people up. We did that earlier. Yes, anyways, the original question was, what was the original question? I belong to wine. I belong to wine because I belong to culture, and I belong to eccentricity and to magic and to the earth, and the wine is a product of the earth, and I feel like that's how we commune. That is my love language with the earth. You own this place. Just be like, you own it.
That was incredibly inspiring. And I think that quote and that framework of, we talked a little bit, we talked a little bit before, and talked about belonging and what it means to like belong to something. James, I don't want to like butcher what you said because it was really beautiful, but it was something about being native and something about at some point the sort of idea of like native and indigeneity becomes a little bit gray because you can actually belong to a place that you weren't necessarily from, which obviously for the Black folks in the room, we all know what that means and understand what that relationship is like. But kind of like thinking about the question in a broader way, I think about my wine journey. I feel like I use that phrase a lot, but I really do believe that it is a journey, and I'm in the middle of it. Like we're all kind of like in the middle of this thing. There is a start, but there isn't really an end. Even if you're out of the industry, there is a sort of like relationship to it. And I just kind of zoom out every once in a while because it really isn't this one moment for me with like when I felt like wine belonged to me or I belonged to it. But there was a sort of like relationship that just kept popping up. There's like different moments in which I'm like, I felt something there, or like I felt something here. And I'm still not in a place where I feel like there's this kind of like proprietary ownership over this thing, but there's this relationship that's been built through these really special moments. But I really do have to say 2020 was a really hard year for obvious reasons, right? And one of the things that was really hard was recognizing the community that was possible that I didn't get to have until it was forced upon us. It was really hard to know for so long that we were all here and we weren't talking to each other. And I'm gonna get emotional over it because it's like, it's a really crazy special thing. When I will tell you that I don't remember very specific moments of my relationship to wine all the time, but I don't think I'll ever forget the moment when I saw Julia Coney post the list of all of the Black wine professionals. I don't think I'll ever forget how it felt. I was shocked, genuinely, earnestly shocked. And so that was a moment in which I said, okay, all right, like, we're out here. Like, I'm over here going, there's like 5 of us in natural wine, I don't know, and for the majority of the people to be here now in the space that we've opened together with me and my incredible, beautiful partners who are in this room, it feels really special to be able to kind of hold that space together and start the conversation of how do we continue and build this relationship in wine together. So that's my answer.
To build off that, for me, the day that the new wine director walked into Olmsted and wasn't a white man that I feared was going to talk down to me, changed my life. Swan Grace walked in the door. She took me to meet Marquita. She took me to meet Kilolo. So I knew these are the people I'm looking up to. And I was like, oh, this is what wine is. That's my mentor. That's where I came up in natural wine, under Swan Grace. I was like, oh, this is what natural wine is. It's Black and brown people understanding and getting it. This is what wine is. So when I went to California to go learn how to make wine and didn't see anybody that looked like me, I was like, I gotta find people now. And then Iman Hanin walks in the door. You know, like, people just started showing up. I said, universe, where are my people at? Let's build this thing. And so when people ask me who I am, or, oh, do you work in wine? Or how do you know so much about this wine? I'm like, wine is my life. Wine is my community. Wine is my culture. Wine is my family. And my family is here in this room. It is beautiful to see.
We're taking.
When we're together, all we do is cry. Literally.
So much.
So much fun.
I'm gonna bring it back around to ABV and the hybrids. I think there's something to this idea of belonging, of how to make wine your own. That this, like, hybrids, it's not the only road to opening up this space, but you know, to be able to look at your own backyard and say, I can make wine. There's you know, to look at places and histories where wine that story hasn't been told or it's been forgotten, to pick up those dropped threads, to retell that history and to make it something different, to say, you know, against a kind of, like, I came up, you know, in classic wine spaces. I didn't feel like wine was really belonging to me. I grew up in Western Michigan. I didn't drink wine at home. You know, it was the scary, like, outside play. Now I can walk in those rooms, somebody's gonna ask me why I'm there. I recognize that. But you know, inside, I felt I wasn't, you know, and man, they make hybrid wine in Michigan. It's crazy. I went back to my hometown. There was like a wild ferment brewing with people like drinking Marquette slushies. Bruh. So yeah, thinking about plants and landscapes, thinking about when you become, when is a vine variety indigenous? You know, what does that mean? What is saying that, oh, it's only true in Italy due to your head? Think about tomatoes and Italian food, and think about where tomatoes are from. We can flip this on its head. And I think that, you know, I don't think it's an accident that this room and these wines are intersecting. I think there's a degree of power there to flip the script.
Don't look at me like that. Okay. All right. Running out of time, but to close out, I want to hear your wish for this community in the future.
Absolutely. I'll keep it short. I know what my experience was like when I started in wine, and it was very intimidating, but not so much that I really felt like I wasn't supposed to do it. I felt like it was too difficult, too hard, too inaccessible, too complicated. And when I had the opportunity to finally be like, oh, that's it, like that's the thing, I made it my mission. I continue to make it my mission to make it as accessible to anyone who walks in the room. If you come here to this specific place, you could be coming for wine, you could be coming for food, for books, just to sit down. You could just be here to be here, and that's it. That's all we want for folks. And if you are here and by chance you want wine, I'm going to make it that you can say, I feel comfortable ordering a glass of wine. And for this community, that's all I want, is for anybody to be in a space that makes someone else feel comfortable to be in that space with you. And that's it.
I want to go back to the word counterculture really quick, because the top selling artist of 2022 is Bad Bunny.
Hey.
The reason I bring that up is because no, I'm like the rug. I tap them together. But so the reason I say this is because the people that are making wine in a way that's innovative, exciting, and progressive to be able to survive the hellscape that is the upcoming and current climate change and late stage capitalism. And does anybody ever feel like a burning dog in the restaurant? Because that's how I feel all the time. But the way that we do that is by taking this quote unquote counterculture and just making it the fucking norm. Making it normal for the winemakers that look like Chris, the winemakers that look like Iman, the winemakers that look like Kathleen, the winemakers that look like Juliana. People living out here, the winemakers like Camila Carrillo.
Like Roxy E.
Yeah.
But to make that the norm of like being able to have a space like Paradise, which is a revolutionary bookstore serving gangster wines and bread, the norm in like the hood. Because we deserve that. We deserve that. We deserve good things. And wine deserves us. And the earth deserves good people that are stewards of the land and stewards of the narrative and stewards of like these stories. And I have hope, even though it's fucked up and sad, I always have hope. So I just want us to all have nice things and to be able to dance at the end of this together. Okay, to make a request, can we play Golden by Jill Scott at the end of this so we can kind of dance to it? I think that's the song that goes down.
Yurka, you remember earlier today, you looked at me and you said, "This is just the rest of our lives." That's it.
So romantic.
We're done now. Thank you so much for being on our panel. You guys, crush it, kill it, you deserve it. Wow. If you needed tissue, there's plenty. I just want to take a second before we get out to Roxy's outro to shout out all of our producers because we collectively are fans, and there's a reason why they're here. Not everybody could be here in person and gets to share their story with you personally, and I do not want their bottles to be in vain. So feel free to taste if you'd like, but I just want to shout some people out real quick. So we have Calce Wine Cooperative. Justine and Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen. Are in attendance. This is a queer, Black, femme, non-binary, worker-owned cooperative, grape cooperative, fruit cooperative, wine cooperative up in Vermont. When we're talking about solidarity, economics, these folks are really leading the way in the wine space. And what you're about to try is only like their second vintage. And when I tell you it is going to send you to the moon, I promise you. It's Calce. We have Ashanta, Will, and Shamila out here really blowing minds with what you're able to do when you just look up and forge some fruit. When I tell you that the Sankofa Fioja guava apple cider was like my top 3 of the year, and I'm not lacking in exposure to wine. I promise you, just delicious and really just grateful for y'all to be here. So thank you. We have 280 Project. We have Chris over here. Really showing us what we can do through solidarity, community, through mutual aid, and honestly, just in uplifting community. We haven't even gotten into it yet, but Chris and 280 Project run a whole program welcoming interns, welcoming folks who want to farm, who want to make wine, and introduce them and plug them into a network of people who are able to show them, support them, and share resources, and just amazing, amazing, amazing. We have Ben out here who, you know, is out in Virginia, who's been really influential, I can say, for John, myself, Bianca, since we, you know, took a trip down with Lee Campbell and got connected with Ben, just blowing our minds on what you can do when you say, hey, I have this space and I'm going to be as welcoming as possible, and doing, you know, the part in diversifying not only the grapes, not just petite saying not just hybrids, but saying, hey, I have a resource in my knowledge and I'm going to share that. And the wines are just so good. We have Todd back here, Wild Ark Farms. I was selling Todd's wine when all I cared about was Italian wine in like 2016. I think the first time I heard the phrase regenerative agriculture associated wine might have been with Todd's wines. And they're all still made about 45 minutes from where I grew up in Monticello, New York, in Pine Bush. When I tell y'all there's nothing out there, there is nothing out there. So cool. And then we have Alfie, Indiana doing Dear Native Grapes. They just planted it in here, and they just, when I say like down to the wire, got labels for their first commercially available release. Awesome. We have Catawba, we have Isabella at Delaware, you guys. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful, and artists, multifaceted artists. Definitely talk them up. And then I also just want to quick shout out the folks that are not here. And I'm so sorry if I miss anybody. I'm going to make this really quick. We have American Wine Project based in Madison, Wisconsin. Erin is really fighting through the bullshit. A lot of what we're talking about with, you know, having to do away with dogma Erin is leading that charge with elbow grease. She is in Middle America working with folks who, have been programmed and taught to think that they have to plant these certain grapes and they have to farm in a certain way. And she has traveled the world making wine, and she went back home to say, my people, you have been lied to, and I'm going to help you. This is not easy work, especially when you have a bunch of doodles in the industry that say that's not organic. Well, how can we convince these people to be organic farmers if along the way they're going to lose half their crop and they don't have access to the technology that's going to allow them to wean their vines off of this drug that has consistently been sprayed, and that's just so very special. We have Pomona Cellars based in Philadelphia, Eva Salinas, but also sourcing from New Jersey and Delaware, just saying, fuck borders, this is what's closest to me. I'm going to go out back, and also has their own kosher certification. So these are kosher certified natural wine. They have their own kosher certification, really focusing on the soul of what it is to make Sabbath observant wine without lacing it with archaic xenophobia. Talk about challenging your own community to do better. We love Eli. Who else is back there? We got Plead. Plead Urban Winery in Asheville. The winery's in Asheville. He is farming in High Appalachia, Boone County. When we talk about time, and time being an essential component of well-made wine, we are talking about Chris fucking Denisha. 4 years on lease to make a house Solera blend, like just wild. He just wants to make good wine. And with this good wine, he is setting an example for farmers around him to also work with these grapes so they can work organically or in a hands-off way and make wines like you can taste them for yourself. I would put them against any other producer. They are clean, sound, and delicious. You saying you too? We got that Noble Carlos Muscadine, baby. Yes, we do. We also have North American Press, Matt Neese, who we just love so much. Matt Neese, a mentor to so many of us, just so generous with his knowledge and research and doing work out in California to convince these vinifera producers to plant hybrids in their vineyards just experimentally to see what's going on. And where, California, they don't really have to think about that right now. He's like, stop thinking about right now, think about 20 years from now and help me do this work. Matt is just outstanding. Who else is back there? We got Tilford Winery. They're new to this conversation. I don't even know if they know that we're speaking about them, but they are a Black-owned vineyard and winery based in Georgia, making muscadine. And you've heard us bring up muscadine quite a few times today. If you read Toni Morrison, muscadine all over. It is something that is tied to Southern Black folks that we have in our yards that we have access to. And if we can embrace muscadine, I promise you this diversity that the industry is calling for, boom, it's done. I hope I'm not missing anybody back there. RAS. Okay, RAS is based up in Maine. RAS is making blueberry wine. So we have a sparkling blueberry wine. This, what do we call it? 100? Everything's in there. It's made from blueberries. Blueberries have been growing in the US for over 10,000 years. That's longer than humans have been here. So when we talk about something that can just grow, blueberries just grow. And it's delicious. Pair it with anything. It's so much fun. And then finally we have Hannah Mockley, Alice working out of Fort Greene, Brooklyn. Ancestral ferments. Yeah, nobody was talking about soul in the US until Hannah Mockley came around and said, I'm going to cook down some rice into some cards and show you what my people are about. And she's killing it. So we have that back there as well. I hope I did not miss anybody. I share all of that to say there is so much going on inside, but also outside of the bottle. And that's really what all of this is about. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And, I also want to shout out James. Erica definitely conceptualized this community and tapped into the geekiest, nerdiest, most tuned in, knowledgeable person, sweetest, giving, charitable, just all of it. James is so important to our community. And if anybody has sat at that center table and had a conversation with him, you understand why. So, a co-founder of Industry Sessions, and thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Have fun tasting now.